Hello, worlds. Welcome to Civilly Savage, where our goal is to help wake people up, as I believe that most people are but a mere shadow of who they could be. Before we get started, be forewarned that I tend to speak very bluntly and have a tendency to use lots of colorful adjectives, so be careful of your surroundings when you watch or listen. My goal is not to offend, but to empower. But as no one likes the person with the mirror, I'm also very okay with people not liking what I say. So, without further ado, it's time to start trimming the wool and pulling up whatever grown up pants you happen to associate with. It's time to get civilly savage. So they have this ultimate goal, right? Let's use some of yours. Like, I want to be my authentic self. I want to lose weight. Um, well, when you are your authentic self, kind of like we were talking about the other day, don't you think you would be less stressed? Don't you think you would be less depressed? Um, and by being less stressed and less depressed, you will sleep better. You will have more energy. And by sleeping better and having more energy, you will most likely make better food choices. Sleeping better, having more energy, making better food choices, you will have more energy to run around and do things. And like all of that will help spin up to not only just burning more calories and adding less bad calories throughout the day, but you'll be in a better mindset, a better emotional place, better physical place to do stuff like, well, I think I feel like actually going for a walk today, so maybe I will, or maybe I feel like going down to the gym today, so I will, or I feel like actually doing a workout today, so maybe I will, right? Like, so it is all interlinked. And like I said, that's the irony that I was talking about one of our last times that we talked was if you talk to people about, hey, let's address your depression, no one really gives a rat's ass about that. And they're like, I'll just take some antidepressants. But when they're like, oh, yeah, I want to lose weight. Well, one of the things to lose weight is you got to feel like getting up and doing things. You got to feel like engaging the day. You got to feel like taking care of yourself. What is that the opposite of? Being depressed. Right? Like, so when we get rid of the depression, lo and behold, our weight starts to drop because we quit eating crappy food and we start moving around more, right? Like, I promise you, they are intimately and reciprocally connected. But yeah, no one, I guess, because of our society, and it's like, oh, that's mental health, so we don't want to talk about that, or I don't really want to address that, or here's a pill for that, right? Like that's the majority of our society nowadays is everything's just programmed to you just need a pill to fix that. And it's like, no, like it's more than that. There's nothing wrong with taking a pill, like, because if you are in massive depression, like maybe you need a pill to help kickstart the engine so you do feel motivated to start moving around, right? Like, but I promise you, part of that kickstart is being your authentic self, working towards a goal that you are passionate about, right? Like, so they are linked much more than people want to admit or would ever truly understand without really looking into it. Would ultimately say if you just put at the very top of the list, I want to be my authentic self, those other goals would just be underneath that goal. These are steps on becoming this, right? Like this is a short-term goal to become this. This is a short-term goal to become this. This is a short-term goal to become this. And ultimately, it's just about being your authentic self, which is amazing in like, what do I want to do with Civilly Savage? I want to help people become more than just a mere shadow of who they currently are. Like, I couldn't have wrapped that up with a better bow if I tried. Let's break the first goal down into some achievable steps, right? Like that's where the rubber really meets the road. So step one in losing weight is
to choose that you are no longer going to stay where you are. That is ultimately step one. Be like, I do not want to be who I am. I love myself, but I want to be a better self. Right. So, and that's an important part, like making sure that we're not beating ourselves up for who we are or who we're not yet or who we haven't been or whatever. Right. Like that just feeds depression and anxiety. We don't want to do that. We just want to say, okay, right. Like, kind of like the whole caterpillar and butterfly thing, be like, this is what I used to be and now this is who I am, and both were fine, but I'm going to transform now. Ta-ta. All right. See you next time. Like, you want to see it, feel it, taste it, hear it, um, on a very real level. You're actually creating the neurological programming, like the hardware, to live that life even before you start living that life, if that makes sense. Currently, we live by patterns, right? Like patterns of recognition, by subconscious and unconscious routines. Well, in a very real sense, and this is the power of like meditation and visualization. Like, this is the real power of it, in my opinion. Like, yes, it drops stress, and yes, it helps build focus and attention and yada yada.
Mhm.
But the real power is we run on subconscious and unconscious programming that are real, like networks, right? Like they are solid, tangible networks that you could watch light up under an electron microscope, right? Well, when you take the time to get into a meditative state, some deep breaths, center, focus, bring your attention here, and then really get into a good visualization of, this is how I want to walk. This is how I want to talk. This is how I want to look. This is how I want to react to life around me. This is what I want my morning routine to look like. You're creating those same neural networks. So if you're literally creating the unconscious and subconscious programming to be more fit, don't you think it would be easier to be more fit? Because that's what we're up against. We're up against the fact that we don't currently have that programming. So in life, when you go through the steps, right? Like when you go to the gym, when you get up early and you go for a walk, you go for a run, you do a round of yoga or whatever it is, that is also creating that neural network, right? That is creating that new habit, that new routine, that real network that's being etched into your brain. But because we can make our inner world just as real as our outer world, seem just as real as our outer world. Your brain doesn't know the difference. You can literally start making those routines even before you start doing them in real life. So when you start doing them in real life, they're easier to do because as far as your brain's concerned, I might have already done this a half a dozen times, maybe even a dozen times. There's less pushback. There's less resistance to, man, I don't know about this yoga routine. I've never done it yet. But if you've taken the time to meditate and visualize how you have your living room set up for yoga, what your yoga mat looks like, how you've done it, what music's on, what video you're going to watch, like, in a very real essence, you've already done it. So there's not as much pushback to, this is new. This is something I'm not used to. This isn't the routine. Like, to a very real degree, like, it is already a routine, especially if you've taken the time to meditate on it half a dozen times. That's the real power. That's why when I'm talking to people about day one, start counting your breaths, start focusing on being here, right? Like, try some meditation, try some breathing, right? Like, that is the literally the building blocks on what you need to rewire your life. because I know how difficult it is to go against the grain. I know how difficult it is to get out of the comfort zone. I know how difficult it is to do stuff that we haven't done. But if you can see it, as the old saying goes, if you can see it, you can achieve it. And part of that saying, and from a psychological and neuroscience aspect, is, well, yeah, if you can see it, you can achieve it, because you are literally setting the wiring up to make it achievable even before you get there in real life.